So hopefully you hopefully you can see two screens on your screen. If you can't, so sort of me that I'm waving at you now, and then my MacBook, which is focused on my Thermomix screen here. So if for any reason you can't see both, that will be because you're not on speaker view. So you'll just need to amend your view to speaker view.
Okay.
So just let me know that you can see everything, and then we'll get going. So good evening, everybody, and it's straightforward this evening because you're all owners. So I can just sort of whiz through things fairly quickly. This is your session to find out how the Thermomix works. So if anything is unclear or you want me to go over something, please just ask. And please feel free to ask any questions that you need to. And sometimes things might occur to you afterwards. So don't hesitate. You can either ping me a message or an email. I think you'll all have my email address now. You've registered for the Zoom, or just ask your advisor. So Erica and Amelia, I know you bought through Linda, so you can always go back to her. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to show you before I actually look at the functions on the Thermomix, and I'll probably just turn this around here so you get a fabulous view of my stomach, is the Thermomix bowl. Now my Thermomix have been in use today, so they're not very clean. And you'll see here on my, we might not, no, you will if you're looking at the view, sort of looking down on me. I was in a restaurant yesterday near Cambridge and we cooked pea and ham soup. And so all this green stuff over the back is the pea and ham soup when the chefs got carried away tasting it because they thought it was absolutely fabulous, and they resorted to just dipping their spoons into the bowl and eating it. They just couldn't believe how it tasted in about 15 minutes. Needless to say, they bought then and there, which was fabulous. So right, here's your bowl. Your bowl has got a set of blades inside it and then a base on the bottom. What most people still don't realise, and this absolutely, I can't quite believe this, but people don't realise that you can take the bowl apart. So you see you've got this little lug here. I've got to try and do it back to front, which is never a good idea. But if I can twist it like this, so you see I can just twist it off to the side, and you'll notice I've got a tea towel down just to protect my work surface, because the blades, when they drop out, you don't want to risk damaging your work surface, especially if you've got a nice marble or granite one. You don't want to take a chip out of it. So the blades just drop out, and then you can put this into the dishwasher. It's just me put you there like that. So the whole thing can go into the dishwasher. I tend not to put that in, mainly because I don't have a lot of space in my dishwasher, because it's usually rammed with all sorts of rubbish that the children get through every day. But certainly I would put these in, and you can put your lid and then the measuring cup as well, which sits in the middle of the lid. So when you see in recipes it says insert measuring cup, that is your measuring cup, and it's called a measuring cup literally because it is a measuring cup. So if you look inside it, you've got a 50 ml measure and then a 100 ml measure up to the top. So actually that can be quite useful. And the reason they've been designed like this is because the Thermomix has been designed to sort of replace as many items of kitchen equipment as possible. And so that you really, it's sort of badged as the kind of the smallest, smartest, complete kitchen in the world. So if you're on the road, or you've gone off on holiday, really you need to take your Thermomix, a knife and a chopping board, and you can pretty much cater for yourself really easily. And lots of the accessories are sort of designed to be multifunctional. So this is the Veroma, which I'll talk about more in a minute, but you can actually use the Veroma as a colander. So, and you can use it as a sort of almost like a salad spinner. So if you wash salad leaves in there, you can just put the lid on. Now your lids won't be clear. This is an old lid. They've redesigned them so that they're dark and they're no longer see-through, which I actually think is a bit of a shame, because I quite like to see what's going on inside. But if you put your salad leaves in here and give them a wash, you can actually shake them out. quite successfully using that. So that's, again, quite a nice little feature. But you can drain pasta through it, and just use all the functions that you normally would a colander. Same thing with this. You can rinse your rice through with it, then you can cook your rice. You'll notice as well there is a sort of a vent on the front. So when we make lemonade, and those of you that have had demos, we always do the fresh lemonade, and you put the simmering basket into the bowl, and then you pour out your lemonade. Once it's crushed the lemons, you pour through this front piece here, because this will sieve out all the the bits and the rind, the pith, and the pips. So again, it's the simmering basket because it sits inside, and generally you would cook rice or vegetables or steamed potatoes in it, but it has got other functions. You can use it as a sieve, and you can also use it as a small colander if necessary. So once you've taken your bowl apart, and when you put it in the dishwasher, yes, you can dishwasher this, or you just need to make sure these metal pins are dry before you put them in. So I just usually use a tea towel and just dry them off before I put my bowl back in the Thermomix. So you just drop your blades in from the top to put the bowl back together, then just hold the lug on the top bit, and then sort of flip it upside down. So much easier doing this than actually demonstrating it while I've got it in my hand. Would you believe when I was quite a new advisor, I was trying to talk one of my customers through it as I was driving up the A1. And I was sort of trying to do the hand actions to kind of work out how I describe it. And it's still one of the hardest things I've had to try and describe, but we got there. So again, you just put the bowl base back on in sort of reverse. So the lug goes off to the side, and then just pull it to, and then you lock the blades into position. When you first get your Thermomix, you will find that the first couple of goes of taking it apart and putting it back together, it's really, really stiff. And then it just loosens off and it becomes easy. So, if you think, oh my goodness, I've got weak wrists, I've got like weak hands, it's going to be really difficult for me. If you can get somebody to help you the first couple of times, then after that, you should be able to do it on your own. Okay, so that sits in the Thermomix. Generally, the simmering basket, if you can see, yeah, you can see me there. The simmering basket sits, let's just move that so you can see both. Oh, now I've got a cable in front of my screen. The simmering basket sits inside, and what I tend to do is, you will see on the part that sort of doesn't open, where the hinge is, you've got this little hole here. I always put that to the handle side, and the reason being is that when you have finished cooking whatever you've got in there, you can pop your spatula. You'll see the spatula's got a little kind of, I suppose, tongue here, and then so it's designed to sit in that hole into the groove, so it clips into the groove, and then you can lift it out. Okay, so that stops you having to sort of go in with your fingers and hoping that you don't burn yourself. I still do go in with my fingers when I can't find my spatulas, and heaven knows I've got enough of them. I've got about 10, I think, in my drawers. And then the other quite neat thing is, you'll notice there's a recess in the bowl handle at the top. So that's designed to, you can sit this little ledge of the spatula on there, and then your bowl contents will drain, or your simmering basket contents rather, will drain back into your bowl. So they really do think of everything. That is really, really useful. I'm just going to, just bear with me 2 ticks, because my dog has disappeared from the back garden. And normally when this happens, it means he's gone, he knows it's dinner time, you see, so he does a tour of the neighbours. He does the same thing at breakfast time, hoping to go, be invited in and to polish off the scraps that are on the floor. But I'm just going to send a child out to go and get him. So hold on. Jamie, oh, Harry's out the front. Harry, come in. Can you sort of tease him back in with a treat? Harry's out the front. Can you get him in with a treat? He's back in with the treat. Fabulous. She's right. The dog wants treats. Oh, now my Thermomix is shutting down now, so I've got to just give my dog a treat for coming back. There you go, mate. I swear he does it just to get treats. Actually, they do. They work. It works the wrong way round. Okay, so that's the simmering basket. Then the Veroma. So this is called the Veroma attachment. And what often throws people when they first have the Thermomix is they see the Veroma setting on a recipe and think, oh, what's that? Do I need to use the Veroma attachment? And the answer to that is sometimes you do, but sometimes there is a Veroma setting on the temperature dial, and it may well mean turn the temperature dial round to the Veroma setting. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. So the Veroma dish sits on top of the Thermomix lid. And so when you're using this, you need to make sure you've got your measuring cup out, because of course that's why you've got a hole in your lid, so that the steam will come up through the lid and then it will effectively steam whatever you've got in the Veroma attachment. Now it comes with a tray as well, so you've got 2 levels to this, and actually, so that what I find is it tends to be slightly hotter in the bottom level because it is closer to the heat. So I would tend to put things like heavier vegetables in there, so things like, you know, potatoes, maybe parsnips, that kind of thing. And then I would tend to put my sort of green vegetables on the top, if I'm sort of steaming veg through, for example, for a roast dinner. Now do have a look in your simple ideas book. Let me just go and grab one. Yes, you can have some chocolate. Jamie, just get us some chocolate. Right. So this is the simple ideas book. And this comes with your Thermomix. It's really good to have a look through for sort of inspiration. There's a lot of the kind of the standard recipes in there that we would recommend you having a go at. But what is really useful about this book is at the back, you've got your guides to things like steaming. And I think I might have just gone past the chopping ones. Please. So at the back, you've got a resources section. And often, again, people don't get this far in the book. But it's got guides to all your chopping functions. So if you wanted to chop, you know, onions or something, and you wanted them finely chopped or coarse chopped, it will give you a sort of the weight guides for, you know, if you put 200 grams of onions in, you would need to chop them at 5 seconds, for 5 seconds at speed 5. If you wanted them finely chopped, or if you wanted them chopped a bit bigger, you might use speed sort of 3 to 5. So that's really useful for different vegetables. And it continues. And then you've got the same for grinding and milling. So if you wanted, one of the things that your Thermomix does really well is grind grains into flour. So, and you can grind coffee beans into sort of ground coffee as well. So it will give you a guide for the sort of the weight and the kind of time and the speed that you need to use. And then you've got your steaming function. So if you want to steam vegetables, it will tell you exactly how long to do it. So these are well worth, when you come to want to use your Thermomix manually, and you're not quite sure of your times, then have a look in the back of the Simple Ideas book, because that can be really helpful. So let's bring this across here now so that you can hopefully see my dials. Okay, yeah, that looks fairly clear. So this is what we call on the Thermomix the home screen. It's where you've got your 3 dials. So your first dial is your time. The second dial is your temperature. Oh, and your third dial is your speed. Night, night, darling. Have you got her a drink, Jamie? She might want a drink. Oh, right, she's had a drink. Right, sorry, my little 3-year-old's going to bed. Have you read her a bedtime story? Right, you're about to. Fabulous. Older children, they can be helpful sometimes. There's a skis trip at stake for him. So, you know, he's got to help out for the next year or he won't be going. So we've got our 3 dials: time, temperature, and speed. Now, if you're following a guided recipe, I mean, it really couldn't be easier. Right, I've got somebody coming in. Let me just let her in. So your first 2 dials will always be preset for you. And then the final instruction will appear at the bottom of your screen. And I will show you an example in a minute. And it will just say, turn speed selector to, you know, whatever speed it is. It might be 3 or 5 or 10. So the first 2 dials are already preset. To operate the dials, if you're using it manually, you use this silver button on the side. Whichever dial is enlarged is the one that this one will operate. So you can see I'm twisting this, and it's changing the time. Then if I want to change the temperature, I can just tap on the temperature dial, and then I can go round, and the temperature runs all the way from 3740 degrees, which is generally what you use when you're heating up liquid for bread dough, all the way round to this Veroma temperature. So if you ever see a recipe, and this is where you'll be possibly following it if you found one on the internet as opposed to looking at Cookidoo, and you see a recipe and you think, oh, you know, it says Veroma. I've got to set my Thermomix to Veroma. What does that mean? I often get asked that question. And what that means is that you just need to find the Veroma setting on the temperature dial. It's as easy as that. And sometimes, it's a good thing to sort of remember that if you are using your Veroma attachment, generally you will need Veroma temperature set on here, because that is where you've got enough steam generated to be able to steam whatever you've got cooking in here. So you'll notice it's about, so here's my 100 degrees. It's just over 120 degrees. So, you know, it's a reasonably high temperature. All right. The Thermomix will go up higher than this. However, only through a guided recipe. So if you are doing things like sugar stages, you can get the Thermomix to go up to about 160 degrees, but not through the manual dials. You would have to follow a guided recipe and use the precise weight of ingredients. And the sugar mode can be a little bit of a stickler for getting things right. So if you make the mistake that I do often, where I think, oh, because I'm a chef, you see, so I like to stop things and have a look and see what's going on. I found that if you're in the middle of making caramel and stop the Thermomix, so you can actually have a look and see what's happening, it doesn't like it at all, and it won't allow you to continue with the recipe. And if you deviate from the quantity of ingredients specified just on those sugar stages recipes, it won't like it. So they have to be precise. But with any other guided recipe, you can alter the quantities of ingredients. You can up it, you can decrease it if you only want to make a couple of portions within reason. Some of the curries already make sort of 6 to 8 portions, and the bowl is pretty full. So if you make butter chicken, for example, it makes a lot of sauce. So it would be unlikely that you would be able to double that recipe. But a lot of the risotto recipes and things like that, you can get away with it increasing the quantities. But it's just a case of you'll soon get a feel for it just by having a play and having a go. But I would recommend the first time you follow a recipe, just follow it, you know, to the letter, because, you know, it'd be a bit of a shame if you start increasing quantities and then all of a sudden realize you can't fit it all in. And then the final dial is the speed dial, and that goes from sort of a gentle stir. I've got anything in my bowl, I don't think. So this is your gentle stir speed. So it's just the first click of the dial, and then it goes in sort of half degree increments all the way round to speed 10. Okay. Didn't like it. Thought I had heat on, and it wouldn't let me blend when I had the heat going. So the other thing you might see on a recipe is you can see there is a little blade icon below the number on the speed dial. If you tap that, you will be putting the blades into reverse. So this is used, if you look at the blades, you'll see on one side they're very thin and they're sharp, and on the other side they're a bit thicker and blunter. So again, very clever design. When the blades spin in a clockwise direction, you've got that thin sharp edge coming into contact with the food. So that's when you're doing the sort of the chopping and the mincing and the grinding actions. And on the other side, you've got the blunt, thicker edge. So when it goes into what we call reverse and it spins in the opposite direction, which is anti-clockwise, then that's when it's doing its sort of stirring, you know, gentle stirring. So when you're making a risotto, again, and you're following a guided recipe, this will automatically come on and it will say reverse enabled. So it will just come on for you. Just be careful. Sometimes you can sort of inadvertently tap the speed dial when you're using the silver button. And on occasion, we have taken the sort of the reverse off, and we've ended up with more of a sort of a baby food type result than a lovely risotto. So you just want to make sure that you've got those blades in reverse in a recipe which calls for it, and don't sort of inadvertently tap it. And if you do, you can easily just put it back on by tapping that little icon again. Okay, so that's the end of the home screen. You'll notice you've got a magnifying glass there. That's the search function. So if you wanted to search for a recipe, you can search directly on Cookidoo for it. So for example, if I knew what I was looking for and I wanted to make this butter chicken, which is one of the classics, butter chicken, I can just use the keyboard and it will appear. So click on butter chicken, and then here are my results, and I can just click on the recipe and it will launch it. It appears on the screen, and all I've got to do is press start cooking, and off we go. Once you get into a recipe, you'll notice there are 3 dots on the top of the screen. So you've got some options here. If you just wanted to put the weighing scales on and, for example, use it as a set of weighing scales, you can just put a bowl on the lid, zero your scales off. So you just need to press that tear button, which zeroes the scales off, and then you can use them. See, if I just press down, my scales are working. But you can actually use the scales even when the Thermomix is cooking. And I think you can use it up to about speed 3. So as long as the Thermomix is not above speed 3, then you can just use the sort of the scale mode independently of what's going on. That can be quite useful, actually. Saves you having to dig around in a drawer. If you want to have a quick look at the ingredients and just the general steps of the recipe, you can press that little down arrow and then you can walk yourself through the recipe. That can be quite helpful. You'll notice there are nutrition breakdowns on the recipe as well, which is also can be very helpful. And then there are quite a few tips as well on lots of the recipes. Some have just a couple, some recipes have got great long kind of books written on them, but that can be quite useful because it can give you substitutions or sort of just different twists on the same recipe. So they're well worth having a look at. And then just to go back into the recipe, you click continue and it will take you into where you left off. The other thing that we've recently had as an update is that you've got this preview mode here. So this actually can be quite useful because if you just want, while it's doing a step and say it's kind of cooking away, in fact, I'll just sort of, let me just click through a couple of steps so I can sort of just show you that. So here, I've got it cooking. You can see my dials have come up for 1 minute, Veroma temperature, because we want to heat up the oil to a really high temperature. And it's just saying, turn it to speed 1. So if you then, can you see you've got your preview button there? So if you click on that, you can actually just run yourself through the next steps while it's cooking. So that can be quite handy, so you can see what's coming next, actually. So you've got kind of 2 options. You can either look at it on the recipe detail screen, or you can go into preview and just sort of see it as the recipe is going to happen in front of you. Okay, so let's just stop that. My bowl will start heating up and then it won't like it if I'm going to try and show you something else. And then at any time, if you come out of the recipe, so if you inadvertently click out of it, or you just want to search for another recipe, you can see that you've got this little bookmark on the screen here. So you can just tap on that and it will take you back to the place where you were, where you left off, so you can just continue. So again, that can be really, really helpful. So let's come out of that recipe. In fact, I'll just come back to my home screen. And then I will show you next the modes. So if you just swipe across, so if you that's when you're on your home screen, you swipe left across the screen, this brings up your modes. So these are more if you're using your Thermomix manually, because of course, if you're in a guided recipe, whichever mode is required by that recipe will automatically come onto your Thermomix screen. So these are really just if you're going to use it manually, and there are certain modes on here which you would just, like the egg boiler mode, which you would just select independently anyway. But again, it will become clear really when you're using it. But for example, if you just wanted to put the scales on, you can tap the scales. If you just want to, if you know your bread recipe and you've weighed in all your ingredients, so I have my own recipe off the top of my head. I know what you're thinking. I could write it as a created recipe, but that would be far too organized for me. So I still just sort of do it as I remember it. So I weigh all my ingredients in using the scale mode, and then I just put my dough function on, and then I set my time for usually somewhere between 2 to 3 minutes, and then just tap on that and just click the selector to start. And that, yeah, because my bowl temperature heated up, it won't let me knead dough, because it's recognized that if you've got a bowl temperature higher than about 40 degrees, you're at risk of killing the yeast. So it's not going to let me do that, but that's fine, because I haven't got any dough in there, but it doesn't know that. Then you've got your turbo function. This is quite useful actually if you've made a cake, or you've got any sort of any mixture left in on your blades and around the bottom of the bowl. If you put your turbo on, so you've got the option of doing it either half a second. It's a bit like a pulse on a traditional food processor, but it's super fast. So often a lot of the grinding and chopping actions will be done by the turbo mode, especially if you want to chop nuts. But again, you'll pick that up as you do guided recipes. So you go from a half round to 2 seconds. So often if I've just still got mixture left in the bottom of the bowl, it's probably not going to let me do this either, because my bowl is going to tell me my bowl temperature is too hot. So for example, when you've made a cake, you can just put a pulse on, click turn, or click start rather, or turn your speed selector, and what it will do is it will spin those blades really quickly. And so whatever mixture you've got stuck on the blades will just be flung out around the side like a bit of a centrifuge. So that can be really quite useful when you come to clean the bowl out. My children hate it because it means that there's no mixture left to lick out when we've been making cakes and things. Then you've got your pre-clean mode, usually most people's favorite mode. So it's fairly self-explanatory. You will have, I've just taken all of my information screens off, but you can see up at the top, you've got a little eye here. And if you are ever unsure of a mode, just click on that eye and it will just take you back to the instructions for that particular mode. So when your Thermomix arrives, it will automatically be preset to show you this screen, so that you can read it for the first time, and then you've got the option to say don't show the message again. But if you click that, you can always go back into it by clicking on eye. So the idea of this is you put enough water in here to cover the blades with a drop or two of washing up liquid, and then you simply select what the Thermomix has been doing, really. So if it's been making dough, then click on dough, and it will automatically run a cleaning program to optimize cleaning of your bowl. So mostly I tend to use either dough or universal. I don't tend to find that the browning, it doesn't really lift any browning from the bottom of the Thermomix if things do catch, and they do catch occasionally, even though, you know, they probably shouldn't on a guided recipe sometimes, especially when you're using it manually and you cook something for slightly too long, a bit like with a saucepan, it may just catch. If it does, the best way to clean it, I usually a spell in the dishwasher usually lifts it off. If not, I've just got like a little nylon sort of scourer that I use that is not abrasive, and I just take the rest of it off with the little nylon scourer. And then the fat or caramel setting is usually if you've been using foods that are particularly greasy, then you can run the fat setting. It just heats up to a higher temperature and dissolves the grease. That's the main difference. Blend, sort of fairly self-explanatory, really. The time is automatically preset to 30 seconds. You can alter that, and then you can choose whichever sort of speed. You can blend on speed 6 or 7 or 8. So between sort of speed 6 and 8 are typically the blending speeds. Having said that, if I want to blend, so when I make smoothies, I tend to just chuck everything in, and then on my home screen, I just whiz the temperature around to 10 and just do it like that. I very rarely bother with the blending function. I usually only use that on a guided recipe for things like hummus. And so if a guided recipe asks you to use the blend function, then, you know, just follow it and go with it, because sometimes if you spin the blades at too high a speed, then, and if you haven't got enough sort of contents in the bowl, then the blades will just tend to spin out. So it will just splatter things all around the side of the bowl, and you'll pick it up through noise. You can hear that the blades are turning at high speed, but they haven't caught any food up. So if that's the case, then you need to just scrape around the bowl again, put the contents back to the sort of the bottom, and then just run it at a slightly lower speed. But things like hummus are generally, the blend, I think speed is about 7 or 8, so it shouldn't do that. Egg boiler, again, one thing to sort of remember with this mode is that all the timings are based on eggs from the fridge. So obviously if you've got room temperature eggs, you will just need to play about with the times. So these are all accurate if you've got fridge temperature eggs, which I never have. My eggs sit at room temperature. So I always slightly overcook them. But if you follow the instructions, again, you know, this machine is all about guaranteeing restaurant quality results, and giving you that consistency and minimizing sort of the margin of error. But in order to do that, you've got to follow the recipe exactly to the letter. And if you start playing about with it, then you're going to get some variation, which is understandable. So when you've decided how you want your eggs, you put your eggs in, you put the water on. The blades don't turn, by the way. So the blades stay in for this, but they don't turn. And you can just, again, use this dial to select how you want your eggs. So I would do either soft or medium soft, really, if I'm doing a boiled egg, and then it will just start cooking for you. So that's really great. And it's amazing, actually, the number of people that sort of joke about this when you know, they hear their friends buying a Thermomix, and they'll say, oh, we're spending £1,000 to boil an egg. It's usually the husbands that say that. And then it's those same husbands that absolutely get obsessed with the egg boiler mode when the Thermomix arrives, because all of a sudden they don't have to stand there, you know, watching like a hawk and sort of timing the egg. And then, you know, slightly sometimes, you know, with the best will in the world, something distracts your attention, and then you think, oh, how long's that had? And you come back to it and it's gone too far. But this is all about taking out that sort of user error and guaranteeing you perfect results every time. And so, you know, it's quite nice sometimes when my customers say, well, my husband, you know, uses it to boil his eggs every morning, and said it's, you know, he does it because it's absolutely perfect. But we don't just want you to boil eggs with it. Obviously, there are so many other things you can do. You've got a kettle mode on there. So, you know, again, if you're on the road, you don't need to take a kettle with you. Really good for sort of motorhome owners like Ed and Dot, only if they're connected to power, of course. But again, you know, I used to find this quite helpful, really, when I had my motorhome, and it just meant I could just get rid of loads of equipment and weight that I didn't need to carry around with me. And then if you're not connected to power, obviously you can just do it on the gas in a saucepan. But you can select sort of what temperature that you want your water, or sometimes I will heat milk up using this mode as well. So if I'm going to do a hot chocolate, I might sort of grind some chocolate first of all, and then put my milk in, and then heat the whole thing up to like 70, 75, 80 degrees. So that's quite useful. And again, once you've selected your temperature, you just click on this dial to start it. You've got a warm-up mode, and then so for the warm-up mode, I knew I would be having to find a butterfly whisk at some point. I did have one. Here it is. Right. This is when my children empty the dishwasher. It's a bit like hide and seek. I never quite know which drawer something's going to appear in. When you use warm-up mode, it's useful to use the whisk. Actually, it just ensures that you are heating food more evenly, and that's one thing I should show you, actually, and I'll do it at this point. So when you put the whisk in, you sort of drop it over the top of the blade, so the blades always stay in there, and then just give it a little, can you see, just give it a little twist. It's not terribly easy to do this and show. Oh, go away. That's another child. I've only got 3 tonight. One's on a residential, thankfully. So can you see I'm just sort of twisting that blade between the whisk between the blades. So once you pop it in, just give it a little twist until it sits up against just one of the blades. It doesn't matter which one, really. I tend to sort of twist in a clockwise way, and that, as far as the Thermomix is concerned, is locked into position. Okay, so you will, with a bit of force, be able to pull it out. But as long as it's had that little twist, the Thermomix is happy. And don't use it. You'll see on here, there's a little number, if you can make out that 4. There's a little reminder there not to use it above speed 4. So some chefs on their YouTube tutorials use it at ridiculous speeds, but I wouldn't recommend it, because if you do, it is likely to sort of ping off, and then the blades will be turning at a high speed, and what will happen is it will just get caught up by the blades and mashed. You can see I had a near fatal accident with it a few months ago, but it's bent it slightly, but it seems to be okay, so I'm just going with it. Mind you, I have got a load of them, but it's generally one of the most sort of common issues that happen, is that customers don't put their whisk in quite correctly, and then it's whisking mashed potato, and all of a sudden it shatters. I mean, they're fairly cheap and easy to replace, but it's just annoying, obviously, picking out plastic from your food, which we don't want. So then you've got your thicker mode, and this is really used for things like making white sauces, hollandaise, bechamel sauce, custard. When you're using a guided recipe, it will automatically come on, and it will automatically set the temperature for you. When I make gravy for a roast dinner, I usually make a roux in here first, and then I put my stock in, or some reduced wine, and then I usually crank that up to about 100 degrees, and then just click. Oh, it won't like it because the lid's not on, it's going to tell me off. There we go. So I'll crank the temperature up to 100 degrees and just click thicken, and then it will automatically sort of decide how long it needs to reach that temperature. sort of based on what you've selected. So that's how, you know, the thicker mode can be quite useful actually if you want to sort of make some gravy for yourself. And often, you know, lots of people will just chuck the flour, the butter and the stock in all together and just let it sort itself out. I'm still a bit of a purist and I do like to make a roux to start with and cook my flour out, because that's the way I was taught at college. But it does work equally well. And also sometimes it can be quite helpful if you have made a sauce, which you probably will never do again, in a saucepan on the hob and it's lumpy, you can pop it in the Thermomix and click thicken and it will sort it out for you. So I've used it in that way. Not that I make lumpy sauces, but having my sous chef has made me quite lazy. Now I try and funnel everything I can into it. Rice cooker. So the rice cooker, you just need to use, there's a rice cooker collection actually on Cookidoo. So that has got the guides for how to use the rice cooker. But again, you've got that little information screen and it will generally tell you to use 2 parts of water to 1 part of grain. So if you're weighing in 200 grams of rice, you'd want to weigh in 400 grams of water. But there is a rice cooker collection on there, and I'll show you how to access the collections in a minute through Cookidoo. Fermentation used to make yogurts. I've got one of my yogurts here. As everything falls out of my fridge. Right. So I make all my own yogurt now. You can see I took this out yesterday, so it was out at room temperature. It's not looking terribly good. It's probably over fermented, but I took this down to show the chefs in the restaurant actually. And they were kind of blown away. You can see this is my yogurt. So it's lovely and thick and creamy. So these are the little Thermomix yogurt pots, which you can order through the website. Very easy to make your yogurt. There's a couple of different recipes that I recommend. And if you're not already part of my Thermomix Whiz customer group, I would recommend joining. I think Erica, you are now, aren't you? You've been invited by Amelia. But I've done a lot of stuff on yogurt because I find it. I mean, I very rarely have a problem with it, but it's it's an example of a process that actually a lot of owners tend to overthink a little bit and tend to make it more complicated than it actually is. But it's really easy. And on my group, I've got a couple of recipes that I recommend. One is the creamy vanilla yogurt. It's an Australian recipe. The one tip I would give you is I always double the milk powder. And then I think it ends up giving you this lovely sort of thick, lovely creamy result. And I tend to add a bit of double cream to it as well. Usually I've got a bit of cream that's sort of, you know, heaven forbid, shall I say, on the turn or just sat in my fridge slightly too long. So I tend to use up any double cream and things like that by putting it into yogurt. And then once the cultures get started, it's absolutely fine, and it just kind of preserves it a little bit longer. So I tend to add, probably for a litre of milk, I might add anything between 100 grams and 200 grams of double cream, which again I just think really, and I tend to add a little bit of sugar. So for again about a litre of milk, I would perhaps add somewhere around 30 to 40 grams of sugar, so it's not overly sweet. And that's what I really love about making your own yogurt, because you can control the sugar content and you don't have any of the thickeners and the emulsifiers and the additives that you tend to find in store-bought versions. And this per pot costs about, I think the last time I worked it out was about 12p versus sort of 15p for a Muller corner, 50p rather for a Muller corner. So there is a cost saving there as well. And if any of you have got the Thermomix serving bowl, so the way the fermentation mode works is once you've made your yogurt mixture and you've decanted it into the jars, what you do is you just rinse out your Thermomix bowl and put some water in there, and then you set your yogurt jars. This has got a spoon in the top. In fact, I'm going to have to take that out because obviously I'm not going to be able to put the lid on. With their lids on, So you put them into the Veroma. And again, the Thermomix jars are all designed, I think there's a set of 8 of them, and they're all designed to sit in the Veroma. Pop the lid on, and then the fermentation. So if you're using a recipe to make yogurt, this will automatically come on. So your fermentation mode comes on. I tend to set it for about 10 hours rather than 8. The bowl temperature here will heat up to 70, heat the water up to 70. But that will mean that by the time sort of the residual heat rises, you achieve a temperature of about 40 degrees in here, which is optimal. I knew that was going to happen. I was trying to resist licking it. Now it's obviously ended up all over my worktop. So you'll get 40 degrees in here, which is sort of optimal for fermenting yogurt. And you just click start. And I let that run overnight. Now, what you want to make sure that you've done before you do this, because I can tell you there's nothing more irritating than having a Thermomix ring at you when it's ready at 4 o'clock in the morning. But our kitchen is just below our bedroom. So, you know, the first time I did this, I hadn't altered my alarm settings. The Thermomix rang for 15 minutes at 4 a.m. because it had finished fermenting. I think I put it on at 8 and I only had it on for 8 hours. So the way to get around that is to go into your settings, and then you just want to make sure, I would just do this when your Thermomix arrives and when you're setting it up. Go into sounds, just turn your volume down to low, the duration to 10 seconds. So it goes anything between, they've got unlimited there, which would just drive me absolutely crackers. They used to be limited to 15 minutes, but I turn it down to 10 seconds. So at the end of a step, it will just ring for 10 seconds at a low volume, just like that. As if by magic, it does it for me. And then you can turn the volume if you want to, of your next button to off. I mean, you can have it as loud as you want, or you can have it off, but I would recommend you sort of have a play with the sounds, and then you can actually change the melody as well. So children quite like this, and put sort of different sounds on. You can personalize it to, you know, how you want it. So that led me quite nicely onto sort of talking through that screen. But, you know, yogurt, I often say, if you've got Thermomix serving bowls, which you may not, I tend to ferment. Now, it's really warm. Let me just see if I've got one in the cupboard I can show you. Oh, yeah. So don't ask me to find the lid. It is in there. Oh, here it is. It's in there somewhere. So these Thermomix serving bowls, which sometimes are given away actually as host gifts, and they're really good because these are worth nearly 50 quid. We've had them for host gifts for hosting a demo for the last couple of months. And so, you know, customers have jumped all over them. So, you know, again, if you want to host a demo, you'll always get a really nice gift for doing it. And when these come up, it is well worth trying to get a group of 3 or 4 friends together and doing a demo just so you can earn one of these. So often, once I've made the yogurt, to just to save on electricity a little bit, because, you know, yes, it's, you know, cheaper to run a Thermomix than it is to run quite a lot of your kitchen appliances. It's even cheaper to pop it into your stainless steel double-walled serving bowl, so I can fit all of my 8 yogurt pots in there, and I just put the lid on, and then you can either go and put this in an airing cupboard, or I put it, we've got like a little garden room or conservatory which just gets up to some obscene temperature in there and when the sun's out. So I just pop it in there for about 3 hours and come back and my yogurt's made in 3 hours. So, you know, that's magic. And if you didn't want to put them into little jars, you can just pour the whole mixture into the Thermomix serving bowl, pop the lid on, and then when it's ready after sort of 3 hours, just decant it into a sterilized Kilner jar like this. So I tend to have 2 different types. I've got this one for the greedy people and then this one for those that want individual portions. So that works quite well. But, you know, yogurt is a really good thing and a real sort of a way to save a little bit of money. If you do as a family eat a lot of yogurt, it's worthwhile having a play with it, because when I first was looking at Thermomix years ago, I lived in France. I've got a lot of French friends, and all my French friends have Thermomixes. And about 4 years ago, when I was sort of first looking at them, one of them said to me that she'd written a business case for her husband based on getting the Thermomix to pay for itself in a year just on making yogurt for her family. So you know, it does work. And then of course, you know, you've got all the other savings from making everything else. You've got the slow cooker. I'm not going to go too much into that. I would recommend that you follow a guided recipe if you want to use it as a slow cooker. You'll find some slow cooker collections on Cookidoo. I tend not to use mine as a slow cooker. I have got a big crock pot, and when I do things like ribs, I'm not going to get them in there, so I still use my slow cooker. But it can be useful if you are, you know, you live in a small environment and you don't have the room to sort of store lots of different pieces of kitchen equipment. Then you can use it quite successfully as a slow cooker, and there's some lovely kind of, you know, casserole type recipes on there. Then you've got your sous vide function. So cooking sous vide is just a sort of a very chefy way for I don't know if you've sort of you've probably come across the term but may not realize what it means. Is you put your food in a vacuum sealed pouch, and then you drop it into a constant temperature water bath. So you can turn the Thermomix into a water bath, because of course you can heat the water up using kettle mode to any temperature. And generally when you're cooking things like steak, you would heat your water up to maybe something like 55 degrees, drop your steaks in these vac sealed pouches and cook them for an hour, and then just finish them off in a pan with a bit of butter just to glaze them. And I tell you what, when you've had when you've had meat cooked sous vide, it is very difficult to go back to doing it any other way, because it is beautifully tender. But I won't go into this too much here. This is just an introduction. You know, it may well be that I run a sort of a masterclass on the sous vide function later in the year, so that people can, you know, get to grips with it. But again, there are very precise guided recipes on using on the sous vide function, and looking at, if you look specifically under collections for sous vide on Cookidoo, and I'll show you where to find them. So you know, that's probably all I need to say about that. You don't have to have a vacuum sealer. You can cook sous vide in a Ziploc bag. You would just need to expel the air, and there is a way of doing it using a bowl of water. It's called the water displacement method, so you can Google that. Alternatively, I think I've got a video of me doing it on the Thermomix Whiz customer group. But you know, it's the Thermomix vacuum sealer is brilliant. It comes with bags, and I do use it, and it's also quite good for sort of storing food. So I often, if I've opened a packet of chicken, for example, and just take out one chicken breast and use it, then I will often just sort of vacuum seal the other chicken breasts, and then they will keep in the fridge for a lot longer, or you can freeze them individually. So that's the sous vide. Come off. And then you've got your peeler. So your peeler mode, Yvonne, I have sent an email to customer services. I just think they're inundated at the moment. But yeah, I think I copied you in on that, or I sent you a copy of that. Okay. This is the blade cover, the new blade cover, which hopefully you've all bought with your Thermomix. And yes, you sort of pop it in over the top. As you see, there's a sort of a slightly raised edge to the top. If I show it to you on that screen, and then like a recess on the bottom, and then you just pop it. Oh, bye. Someone said they got to run. Just pop it over the top of the blaze and just give it a little twist.
Thank you,
like
Lindsay.
That. No problem at all.
Yeah, just a refresher.
Yeah.
All right.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks for joining. And then to use the peeler mode, you put some water in, you put your potatoes in. Again, all the instructions are on the screen. Put your lid on with a measuring, make sure you use the measuring cup, otherwise you'll have water like spurting out the top. And then you just allow it to sort of rumble away for 3 to 4 minutes, and all the skins will come off, and then you just simply pour it down the sink, and then you've got these lovely clean peeled potatoes without you having to peel them yourself. which is quite useful because every time I peel vegetables, I always nick my manicured hands. It really annoys me. So yes, I should use the peeler mode a little bit more often. But so that's the modes. And as the Thermomix is the only appliance actually that we say that gets better with age, we will be introducing, you'll have new modes that come online every sort of periodically. You'll be notified there's a software update, and you will get new modes and new functionality delivered to you as well, which is great. So when we first had the TM6, we didn't have half of this, and they've added a lot of kind of new modes and new functions. So if I just go back to the home screen and then to the menu. So the main menu can be accessed by just tapping on the three horizontal lines at the side. Can you see that? If you can see that, you can see my three horizontal lines. Here is where you pick up things like, you know, the settings. So you can have a scroll down, you can connect to different Wi-Fi networks if you're traveling, and you take your Thermomix, you want to connect it to Wi-Fi, just tap on Wi-Fi and then it will find the other networks around. You just put in the passcode. You just need, in fact, I'm going to turn that off because I don't need my Bluetooth on it for the time being. The Bluetooth is really only used if you have got a Thermomix Friend device, so it pairs with the Thermomix Friend. Your Cookidoo account details should be in there. And then we've looked at sounds. You can play with your display brightness if you need to. And transportation mode can be quite useful. Dot, this is probably one for you and Ed. If you activate transportation mode, it means that these locking handles, I'll just show you that. If I activate, the handles come on and lock the bowl into place. Yeah. And then so you then press the speed selector to shut it down, and then when you next plug it into power, they will just automatically release. But this just means that you can keep your bowl secure. So actually I used this yesterday when I came back with with what was left of the pea and mint soup that the chefs had left me. I had sort of half of it left in my bowl, and so I just put transportation mode on so that it locked into position and the lid wouldn't come off when, you know, it was in the car, because my husband would not have thanked me if he'd have ended up with a green boot. So that's really quite useful, and probably a safer way to transport it. You can put a pin on it to stop children using it if you don't want them to. However, I'm all for encouraging my children to use the Thermomix. The more cooking they do, the better. And then if for any reason you need to do a factory reset, it sounds worse than it actually is. Sometimes they get their knickers in a twist. If you do a factory reset, you're not going to lose all your Cookidoo data because that's stored on the cloud and it's in a separate way. But you will lose things like your sound settings and any recipes that are stored on the hard drive. So again, that's a useful thing for you to know. If you are ever traveling and you're not going to have access to Wi-Fi and you won't be able to connect to your Cookidoo account, you have the option of, before you leave, if you find what recipes you want to cook and click through a couple of the steps, or just one step, you just click into them, then the recipes will appear in your recently cooked screen, and these will be accessible without you being connected to power. So often when I go off and do demos, and you know, sometimes clients can't remember their Wi-Fi passwords, and I always just load my recipes onto my screen, click through a couple of steps so that they're in my recipe history, and then I've got access to them without having to use Wi-Fi if necessary. You can actually hotspot off a mobile phone as well, which can be quite useful. But if you're going to do that, what you need to make sure is that you don't have an apostrophe in your phone name. So for example, I had to rename my iPhone to Lindsay iPhone, because when I had Lindsay's iPhone, for whatever reason, the the Thermomix would not pick up a phone name with an apostrophe in it. So that's, again, one thing to remember. So if you ever get into difficulties trying to hotspot from your phone, it's worth remembering that if you've got an apostrophe in your phone name, it won't let you do it. So just take it off. And then if you ever want to contact Thermomix, the contact details are on here. So you've got your phone number for customer services and your email address. And then you've also got the instruction manual for the Thermomix on the screen. You will get an instruction manual in your box, but you've also got it on the screen as well, and the safety instructions. And then sort of the final thing on this main menu is you've got access to, of course, all your recipes. So your weekly planner can be found here. So you can see I have that in for today. This I was doing a ramen for dinner this evening. And you organise your weekly planner really through your Cookidoo app. You can't sort out your planner through the main Thermomix screen. You have to do it on your, so if you want to schedule in recipes for, you know, that tomorrow or the day after or next week, you have to do it through your app. You've got the option on any recipe that you search on the Cookidoo screen or on the Thermomix screen, you've got the option to cook it today. So if you just want to make and cook something immediately, click cook today and it will appear in your today screen, but it won't give you the option to schedule it in advance. So that's where you find your weekly planner. You also find your recipes. So any recipes that you've stored to your Cookidoo account, you will find here. So you've got your created collections. So these are all your recipe folders that you can create. You can see I've got hundreds of them. And so you can organize all the recipes into sort of different themes. So they're easier to find. And then, you know, you just click on the folder and then it's brought up baby food. And then, you know, you can launch your recipe. That's one that I probably need to delete now because I'm certainly not having any more babies. And then you've also got your saved collections. So these are the Thermomix recipe collections that are published by Thermomix and available on the Cookidoo platform. Again, there's thousands of them. So you can save entire collections to your Cookidoo app. And then as you're scrolling down, you can see I always use the Thermomix Christmas one because it's a nice comprehensive collection. There's sort of tend to be on the sort of the bigger collections, there's 60 to maybe 100 recipes. Sometimes they just bring out very targeted collections of sort of 6 to 10 recipes. You know, if, for example, there's a kind of a seasonal theme coming up like Halloween, you might find you've got a Halloween collection appear with kind of, you know, 6 to 10 Halloween themed recipes. But this is one of the classic Christmas books. There's some amazing recipes in here, not just your Christmas. Cheese straws, delicious. The chicken liver parfait, that's an absolute classic. You've got it. If you like chicken liver pate, you've got to make the parfait. And then you've got things like this pull apart bread, which you arrange the dough balls. This is great fun for children actually, into like a Christmas tree shape, but you don't have to. You can do it into any shape. You know, you could do it into a round ring if you wanted to. So there's some really nice recipes, quite versatile recipes on here. So they're the collections. Now I'm going to show you, I know we've just slightly overrun, so I hope you're okay. You're finding this helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. If I just share my screen, I'm just going to go on to, let me go on to Safari, see if I can get on there, and then Cookidoo. So can you see my Cookidoo screen now? Yes, you should be able to. Oh yeah, it's gone on there. So if I just minimize, right, so this is what your Cookidoo account looks like. And I'm just going to whiz through this very, very quickly. It should take no longer than sort of 10 minutes, really. The one thing that you need to check when you set up your account, I'm not sure if I know how to do this through the website because I always tell people how to do it for the app, but I'm going to give it a go. If I click on view profile, what you need to do, so when you first launch your app, go into this little chef's hat icon, which will be on the top right hand side of your screen. You need to make sure that you set up your search filter preferences correctly. Otherwise you will just be restricted to UK recipes, which will be a bit of a shame because there's loads of really good US and Australian ones that you can find too. So what you need to do is go to update filter, scroll down, make sure you put a tick in the English language box, and then if you come down, keep going down to the country, make sure that you remove the tick. So manually you'll get a tick in the UK box. If I just go back up to the top, this is how your Cookidoo account will default, is automatically set up when you create your UK Cookidoo account. Okay. So what you need to make sure that you do is remove that tick there. So take the tick out of the box and then click save. And it will say, and all you want is English showing under language and all countries. And that will mean that you find all of the English language recipes from all the different Cookidoo platforms across the world. And it will widen your search criteria from about maybe 2,000 to something like 8,000. So it's really worthwhile doing. If you do speak other languages, or you've come across recipes that you want to cook that are in different languages, you can use Google Translate to translate your recipe. So I've got the Google Translate app on my phone, and you can just set it. If for example you've got an Italian recipe that is showing on your screen, you can set Google Translate, the app, to translate from Italian to English, and just hold the phone over the screen, and it will automatically show in your phone what the translation is. So that can be really useful as well. So that makes sure your filters are set up correctly. Then you've got the same sort of search criteria as you have on your Thermomix. So of course you'll see the same recipes. This one is a really good one to get started with, the vegetable stock paste. Amazing how useful that is. Will save yourself a lot of money again versus buying these little stock pots. I just can't believe how much these sorts of things, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm going to hold it up there. These Knorr stock pots cost, I mean, I think it's something like £2 for 8. I mean, I could get through, I only have these to show at demos actually. I could get through those in a week, but now I just use, get this out of the fridge, I save up, you can save up vegetable pick. Can you see this? I don't know if you can see my other screen, or can you just see my, yeah, there we go. So I make my own vegetable stock paste you can save up peelings, you can freeze them down. Once you've got enough sort of quantity of the vegetables, I think it's about 750 grams, you chuck it all in your Thermomix following the recipe with a load of salt and a bit of olive oil, and it will cook it all down and blend it for you, and you end up with this, which adds so much flavour to what you're cooking, and costs next to nothing as well. So again, that's a good little saving. You'll notice that every recipe has got 3 little dots at the side of it. Can you still see my Cookidoo screen? Yeah, I think you can. And so you've got those little options here. You can put it to cook today. You can add it to your weekly planner. So if you wanted to say, right, I'm going to cook it next Thursday, click save. Here it goes onto my weekly planner for next Thursday. You can add it. This is how you add it to your collection. So you can always create a new collection if you want to. And obviously, when you haven't got anything in your Cookidoo account to start with, you'll be creating lots of collections to get going with. And then you can also add those ingredients to your shopping list. So I did promise somebody I'd go through the shopping list today, but I'm not sure they've joined. But that's why I've recorded the session. So if you go into your weekly planner there, I mean, I'm not a great planner, as I think I probably said. I'm more of a spontaneous cook. So this isn't a feature that I use, but again, it really helps you to get organized. You can save a lot of money because you only really buy the ingredients that you need to use for the recipes that you've selected. So lots of my customers love this function because it saves them a lot of money alone. And so once you've sort of got the recipes onto your shopping list, here you go, you can see them feature on the shopping list. I can have a look at my ingredients, so I can look at it either by category, so that can be helpful if you're walking around the supermarket, or what I find easiest is just by recipe, so I can see what ingredients are needed for a certain recipe. You can, if you've got olive oil, for example, here I've got this little box, I just tick it or click it and it disappears. Oh, I know I've got parmesan, I've definitely got spring onions, I don't need water. So you can edit it, and then right at the bottom of the shopping list you can add additional items. So if you want to add anything else on, you do it here. And then once you're happy with it, you click order ingredients, and then you've got these different options. Waitrose, brilliant, that's come back online. We had a bit of a glitch, but it's obviously been sorted out. We used to have Asda on here actually, but Asda hasn't been on here for a long time. They had the same sort of integration problem as Tesco did, and it was their end. And Tesco and Waitrose have managed to fix it, but Asda still haven't. So we haven't got Asda at the moment, but you've got plenty of other choices. So you can have a quick look at how much those ingredients would cost at Waitrose, for example. And then if you wanted to go to change store, you could have a little look at Sainsbury's. I can't quite believe that it's going to cost £109 at Sainsbury's and only 55 at Waitrose. That doesn't seem quite right there. I inadvertently doubled everything that I want. And then if you have a look at Tesco, it's really cheap in Tesco. And then you can have a look at, where am I gone to? Chain store again. Have a look at Ocado, for example. So it's really easy to compare store prices across the different grocery stores and then decide where you're going to spend your money. And so then once you've sort of decided what which shop you're going to buy in, you just add it to your cart, and then it will walk you step by step through the checkout process and book in your delivery slot. So that's really straightforward. And then so the last thing to sort of show you is when you're searching for recipes, I referred to collections a little bit earlier. So you can either search Cookidoo at the recipe level, or you can search for collections. So when you search for collections, you'll see if you set up your filters like I showed you to, unfortunately, it will show you all of the collections from all across the world. So there'll be a lot, obviously, in different languages. So this is where, just for collections, you just need to click on filters, and then you have to manually, it won't let you filter, bizarrely enough, on language. You just have to add back in Australia, UK, and US. This is just a search, and then it narrows it down to sort of 590 odd results, and then you'll just have your English collections on here. So you can see this is a nice new collection. Actually, it's a host gift this month. You can get a hard copy book, which is a really nice book. Some really good recipes on here for sort of saving a bit of money and reducing food waste as well. So it's well worth having a look at. And I, from time to time, just make sure sort of once a month I've kind of scrolled down through the collections, just to have a look at what the different markets are releasing, because you've got access to, like I said, the Australian and US recipes, and there are some really nice things that come up. So this chicken, I'm always looking for chicken recipes. This Magnolia Kitchen's got quite a lot of sort of really good professional baking recipes, baked products, and this was quite fun, this retro. It's some really nice looking. I've got to have a go at this Black Forest Gatto, and the ice fingers as well. This Butterscotch Delight is really a really good quick pudding, actually. So you can then, so once you've sort of had a look at the collections, you can save it. So you click save, and that is where those collections will then appear. If you go back to my recipes, and you go to saved, it was called retro, wasn't it? It should just appear. It might not do it. It just depends how quick my Wi-Fi is this evening, which it probably isn't given. Oh, there it is. So it's appeared in my saved collection list. So you can search your collections, either your created ones, so they're the folders that you create, or your saved Thermomix sort of published collections. So if I just go back, that might not like it now. Just go back to search, probably easier like that. So it's well worth remembering that you can search for different types of things. So you can either search recipes or you can search collections. So if you wanted to have a look for the rice cooker collection, for example, that I mentioned, you've got your rice cooker mode, and that will just take you in. And you can see I've already got that saved to my Cookidoo account. You can save individual recipes if you want to. You can add them to your own collections, or you can bookmark them, which is another way of sort of favoriting them. So you can always bookmark a recipe, and so see that basmati rice. If I bookmark it, then that will be stored. Again, if you go into my recipes, you'll see the bookmark at the top, and here you've got the basmati rice. Just drop in. So the bookmarks can be quite useful. So these, I need to have a good weed out of these. This is my yogurt recipe that I use a lot, the creamy vanilla one. But a lot of these are not recipes that I necessarily use frequently, so I just need to remove the bookmarks. But it's quite useful. You can sort of put together, you can store your favorite recipes in one place, and again, they will be available directly under the main menu function on your Thermomix under bookmarks. These are quite good fun. This is where I get a bit carried away looking through recipes, so I need to stop myself when I do these sessions. And then the other thing you can search for on the Cookidoo website, so this is through the website cookidoo.co.uk, not through the app. I don't believe you can do this on the app, but I could be wrong. Is you can search for articles. So there, and I think you'll need to again manually just add in the countries, the English speaking countries. So there are some really good seasonal kind of articles here on how to use sort of seasonal products, or how to get inspiration for dinner parties. We've got some tutorials on here, how to make different types of pastry, how to work with a pastry, how to roll it out, how to line a tin, how to do some bread work, I think. So that's, again, well worth a look. Must try ice cream recipes going into summer. I might have to have a look at that. So this is a part of Cookidoo that is often overlooked, but again, I sort of liken this to reading the Waitrose Food Illustrated magazine, which I love, and there's always lots of inspiration available at your fingertips here. And then the home screen, if you go to explore, if you sort of scroll down on the home screen, you've always got this kind of welcome screen, and then you go down and it will show you the latest recipes that have been published. And then don't know,
Lindsay, whether I can't see it anymore. I don't know whether it's just me.
Oh, I don't know. Can everybody else see my screen, or have we? Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's just me then. Oh.
Have you inadvertently come off screen?
No. It's when you went to their website. Not to worry. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Let me stop share and start.
No, don't worry about it, Lindsay. If you need it finished, I can always watch it on the record.
Yeah. So if I just stop that and just go back into it, just tell me if you can see it now.
I can.
Yeah, I can.
Looking at the Cookidoo website.
Yeah.
Okay, it must just be me then.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, anyway, Yvonne, I mean, you can always pop round. You're only around the corner, so just pop in and I'll show you face to face. So scroll down, and it will give you like the most cooked recipes as well. So it's quite funny when we do online demos as a team. We usually find that we manage to influence the most cooked recipes in the UK, because people that join our demo suddenly start cooking what we've been doing. So that's a goal, to get all 4 most cooked recipes on the Cookidoo website when we do a demo. And then again, you've got articles here that you can have a look at. So there's one on flexitarian flavors, Japan, tips for getting how to create your own recipes. So that's something I haven't gone into. But again, if you want to write your own recipes to appear on the Thermomix screen, so for example, you have got a favourite cake recipe, that you can add that now into your own Cookidoo, and it will appear under created recipes. So and the way you do that is if you just scroll down and go to your tips for recipe creations, it will just walk you through how to do it.
So Lindsay, join Cookidoo
yes.
through the website.
So you can do it either way. You can register through cookidoo.co.uk, or you can register through the app. But if you're doing it through the website, make sure you go onto cookidoo.co.uk, not cookidoo.com.
Right.
Because the .com, if you register on cookidoo.com, when your Thermomix arrives, it won't recognise the .com sort of domain, because it's for our American colleagues. So yes, people, it can be sorted out, but it involves customer service, and it can take and it involves the Cookidoo team globally, so it can just take a bit of time to transfer over. So it's always better, I would say, go through the app, and then it will automatically detect your region, and it's unlikely that you would register on the wrong Cookidoo site. You'd like to think it wouldn't cause such a problem in this day and age, but it seems to. So let's just go back to explore, and then so as you go down, you've got like recipe spotlights, and then the new collections that are brought out in the UK as well, so it just draws your attention to them. And then there's this is permanently on here, just a guide to doing your ingredient ordering through Cookidoo. That can be quite useful. Just wanted to go to, if I just go to my recipes created now, just trying to, I can never remember where you go to create your own recipes, which is really rubbish, isn't it? I don't think it's on there. I think if you go to if I go to articles, introducing created recipes, there you go. So if you want to write your own recipes to appear on your Cookidoo account, then just remember to search on the articles for introducing created recipes, and then it will just walk you through step by step how to do it. There we go to created recipes. Oh, it's going to ask me to, that's why it wasn't appearing, because it seems to have lost my login for some reason. Oh, now it's telling me to upgrade, which it really shouldn't be, because I should have full access to it as an advisor. Right, I think that's probably my cue to stop the session for this evening. As I get myself into increasingly hot water. But yes, if you've got any questions on created recipes, ask your advisor, and I hope that advisor is not me. No, but seriously, I really should. We've only had it for about a year. I really should find it out. So anyway, I hope you found the session useful this evening. I'm just going to, let's stop recording now.